Okay, so we're all familiar with the Harley Quinn show, yeah? Irreverent, high-octane animated series about one Harley Quinn breaking up with the Joker and trying to figure herself out while running into a plethora of DC characters, all similarly exaggerated but strangely accurate to who they are. Okay, maybe not Two-Face, because instead of the tragic, brooding figure with a serious lack of faith in his own agency in the world, he's kinda just a double-crossing bastard, but honestly, you could pretty much put the Mr. Freeze episode right next to Heart of Ice, and it wouldn't feel out of place, despite the more comedic traits and snazzy mohawk he was given. But it's not the surprisingly well-done takes on classic stories like the aforementioned Heart of Ice or Killing Joke that I wanted to talk about. No, what I wanted to discuss is how this over-the-top crass violent punk rock mix of DC Comics and Venture Brothers did a better Silent Hill story than most of the recent games. And that one game that dug up Silent Hill's corpse, flayed its face and is wearing it trying to convince us its name is Silent Bill. And how did it pull it off? Glad you asked! To the rest of the video. So, the episode in question is Season 3, Episode 8, Batman Begins. Forever. Oh yeah, heads up, because I'm gonna have to spoil some stuff for both the show and for Silent Hill 2 specifically, so if you haven't watched or played either, I highly recommend you do so. I mean, this video isn't going anywhere, but you only get one shot to experience them for the first time, so do not miss your chance of this show, because this opportunity comes once in a lifetime, you better! Sorry, where was I? Right, Episode 8, Batman Begins, Forever. Already the title may seem like just a fun callback to the movies, but it's actually much more appropriate once you've seen the episode, but we'll get back to that later. So the gist of the episode, without spoiling 3 whole seasons, is that Bruce Wayne, who's also Batman by the way, kidnapped Poison Ivy's sentient houseplant, Frank, whom she was gonna use to resurrect ancient flora beneath Gotham and turn it into a jungle paradise/wasteland, depending on your preference. So to get Frank back, Harley and Ivy kidnap Bruce Wayne, try to get him to talk, which fails because, you know, he's Batman, and so they decide to enter his mind with the help of Dr. Psycho, which they do. And this is where things get dark and weird, but mostly dark. Unsurprisingly, the inside of Bruce Wayne/Batman's mind is pretty much made up of Gotham City, modeled heavily after the 90s animated series, instead of Chicago. But not just any old rundown gothic crime-infested part, oh no. Our protagonists find themselves in front of a movie theater, where, wouldn't you know it, a happy family is just exiting from a showing of Mask of Zorro, the black and white one, not the Antonio Banderas one, or Zorro the Gay Blade for that matter. I'm sure you'll see where this is going, so let's not belabor the point. Family decides to walk home through Crime Alley. Creepy mugger shows up, parents get shot, child stares blankly, forever traumatized. Since a recently orphaned 8-year-old is not the best source of information, the group decides to go to a different memory to find what they're looking for. After pulling a GTA on the Waynemobile, Memory Alfred, ever the gentleman, gives them a ride to another memory, which is the same memory. Anywhere they go and anywhere they look, all that can be seen is an endless loop of the death of Bruce's parents. Seeing as how there's no other version of Bruce to talk to, Harley gets the idea to save the Wayne's life by beating up their murderer, Joe Chill. This simply does not work. In Bruce's mind, Joe Chill is immortal, invulnerable, inevitable, and other words starting with in, a constant deranged smile on his face. Realizing that she can't stop the murder itself, Harley, being a trained therapist after all, decides to shield young Bruce from the trauma. This has the effect of keeping him conscious and present, Harley having softened the impact of that event. However, it also has the effect of the memory of Joe Chill wanting to kill Harley, who has become a source of comfort for Bruce. After a few close calls and some trips down memory lane, and some more shoutouts to the animated series, woo! The unrelenting specter that is the source of Bruce's trauma catches up to them, and, due to some provocation from Harley, unmasks himself to reveal an adult Bruce Wayne? Yeah, so turns out that Bruce blames himself for the death of his parents, making them not only go to see the movie, but also to walk home through Crime Alley. And, as he puts it,
everything I do as Batman is to make that one night right. Yet it's never enough. So I must never forget. That is my penance.
He's forcing himself to relive the trauma of his parents' death, so he will never become complacent and just move on. He is his own tormentor. He truly believes that's all he deserves.
Come on, champ, let's go watch our parents die. It's what we deserve.
After that little revelation, Harley is forced to give back young Bruce, promising to help him outside, cause the inside is too messed up, and gets tossed back into the real world, where things don't get much saner, but that's for the next episode to deal with. Now, at this point, if you are familiar with Silent Hill 2, you'll be nodding in agreement at my claim that this episode feels like a version of it. But for the unfamiliar, a quick recap. Silent Hill 2 is about James Sunderland going to the town of Silent Hill to find his wife, Mary, who's been dead for years, but he got a letter from her anyway, so might as well well go and take a look. The town is full of grotesque monstrosities, all vaguely feminine and sexualized for some reason. No, it's not fan service, that happens later in the franchise. Except for the big alpha monster himself, the infamous Pyramid Head, who's very much on the masculine side of horrible entities stalking the desolate corners of the town. He constantly stalks and hounds James, is impervious to weapons, and also kills a character that is pretty much an idealized version of James's wife multiple times in front of him. And the reason for all this traumatic shenanigans? Yep, you guessed it. Or maybe not, in which case, don't worry, I gotcha. James himself killed his wife, who was suffering from a terrible illness, to be free of both taking care of her and from the verbal and emotional abuse she was putting him through due to her condition. He also mentions wanting to end Mary's suffering, but quickly admits that that was just a small part of it. After killing her, he represses the memory and is drawn to the town, which manifests your innermost fears and regrets. The monster's feminine appearance serves to remind James of his wife, of the nurses in the hospital he so frequently had to visit, and of his unfulfilled desires during that period. And Pyramid Head is nothing more than the manifestation of James's guilt and desire to punish himself. It is always present, it cannot be killed, and it kills the closest thing to Mary James has to force him to relive his worst act. Sound familiar? One can pretty much draw a distinct parallel between the various elements of the episode and the game. Dark, creepy place that has a strong tie to a character? Check. Sad character having to experience their worst day over and over again? Check. Sad act being carried out by an unstoppable force that is a representation of the character's guilt and the creation of their own making? Check. The entire scenario being pretty much one giant personalized purgatory born from a catastrophic amount of guilt and self-loathing? Check. Seriously, the whole setup of Silent Hill fits Batman so well, it's crazy something like this hasn't been done before. I mean, sure, whenever Batman takes a whiff of Scarecrow's eau de terreur, it's often hinted at, or outright shown, how he's afraid of not living up to the family name, or not doing enough to avenge their deaths, or whatever, but it's rare that we see Bruce's psyche portrayed to this level of depth. Sure, you don't need to be a psychiatrist to figure out that he's fighting crime to cope with his trauma and whatnot, but seeing it this way really emphasized the reason why a character like Batman can get away with being a borderline, and sometimes straight up, Mary Sue, or Marty Stu, or whatever, and still be such a beloved character. It's because for all his competence, badassery, and I always win because I'm Batman, at the end of the day, he is not, and usually never will be, happy. He can be complacent or temporarily pleased with his deeds, but his complete inability to get over that one traumatic event is his downfall. The Wayne parents weren't the only ones who died in Crime Alley that night. A version of Bruce Wayne that could ever be happy did as well. And this episode of the show, with story beats reminiscent of Silent Hill, illustrated that perfectly. But the rest of the show is hella fun, so don't be scared off by the depressing episode. Look, they got Matt Ryan Constantine.
Give us a ring, won't you, love?
Awesome. Oh, hey, thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, then please don't forget to like and subscribe and follow me on TikTok and Instagram and blah 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 blah.